Okay, this tutorial will go over pulling the sales volume report by year for each salesperson and all of their current accounts for multiple years. So we're going to go through pulling this report, and then we're going to export to Excel and go over some little tips and tricks for once we export to Excel. So I've got the report pulled up here, just usual methods of generating the report. I'm going to enter my date ranges. For this example, I'm going to do 2019 year to date, and I'm going to do 2018 year to date, and then I'm going to do 2018 full year. On these multiple year reports, you have to use at least 2 of the date ranges. If you only need 1 date range, don't choose a multiple years report, just choose a regular report. So you have to use at least 2 date ranges. You can use up to 4. You'll see 4 sets of date ranges here. For the 3rd and 4th ranges, there's going to be these arbitrary dates entered in. If you don't need those ranges, leave those dates in there. It just helps the report to pull correctly. If you do need the ranges, like in this example, I'm going to use the 3rd date range, just override it. So I'm just going to put my figures in here. And then I'm not going to use my 4th date range, so I'm just going to leave the arbitrary dates in here. For my sales, I'm going to do this report for all sales staff. So whenever I want my full range, I'll select from 1 to 91. And that's my full range. I've added it, and I'll say OK. It's normal that this one's going to take a little while to generate. You're looking at every account in our system, and you're also looking at 3 date ranges worth of data. So, all right, so we're just going to wait for that to come up. All right, so here it's given me my data. You guys are familiar with what you can do within the Crystal report. You can jump to specific salespeople over here. You can flip pages over here, but I don't really need to do any of that. I'm ready to export. So I'm going to export, and I'm going to choose Excel, the first Excel option that we come to. And I want to do all of my pages, and then I'm going to choose where I want to save. All right. And just like it took a while to run, it's going to take a little longer to export as well. It's a large report. All right. So now I'm going to go to my file location where I saved this report and pull it up. It's going to open in Excel. And at this point, I'm going to start cleaning up the report just with some personal preferences on how I like to format things. And I'm also going to add some formulas to show the differences between these 3 sets of data. Right, so first I like to format and clean up first before I add the formulas. So I'm going to get rid of this column here. This was my 4th date range that I didn't use. So I'm going to get rid of that. I like to center my, my figures. So I want to center all 3 of these columns. So I'm just going to highlight along the top with the column letters. And then I'm just going to click my icon here to center them. All right. A common thing with Crystal reports, sometimes it's right below the first row, sometimes it's right above. Likes to throw some blank rows in there. I'm just going to get rid of that blank row so it doesn't cause me any problems when I go to create my formulas. I'm going to get rid of the shading too. And I am going to put grid lines on everything. I can do that a couple ways. I can use the borders feature here. You know, I can select everything and right click, go to format cells and go to borders, choose your borders there. The easiest way is just to add grid lines. So I'm going to, whenever I want to select everything, I'm going to go to this little triangle icon here that selects everything. I'm going to go to page layout, and I see an option for grid lines. I want to view them, and I want them to print. All right, so now I've got grid lines around my data. I've got my 3 different data sets here. You can see it's sorted by salesperson and then alphabetically by account within salesperson. Each salesperson has a subtotal. This report doesn't have a total at the end, and here's why. You don't want to get a total from this report that you're going to use as is for a comparison on how we're doing, because up here in Fran's area, we've got some supplier billbacks listed. Those aren't ever going to go away. They're always going to be there. It's just part of our system. So we've got some supplier billbacks that aren't true sales. We also sometimes have some brand rights transfers, like this Republic National. This isn't really $9,000 sold. This is a transfer of brand rights. So we take those out to accurately get our sales totals. There are other reports that are better for getting a total. I'm going to show you how to, compile a total at the end if you need one. But that's just a little information for why it's not there automatically. All right, so I've got this report, I've got everything now in a format that I'm comfortable with. So now I'm going to look at adding my formulas. All right, so I'm going to start over here, and this formula I'm going to call my change from 19 year-to-date to 18 year-to-date. Okay, so I want to see how much we've gone up or down this year versus last year. All right, and so I'm going to go do a little cleanup on this column header. I'm going to tell it to wrap the text. I'm just going to expand the column a little bit. And I'm going to center everything in the column. So here, I want to see a percentage change. And actually, let me mark that here, that this is going to be my percentage change from 19 year-to-date to 18 year-to-date. So if I want to see a percentage change, I'm always going to kind of use the same formula. I want to know the difference between 2019 minus 2018 divided by 2018. So to tell Excel to calculate that, I'm going to, in this cell where I want my first formula to be, I'm going to type my equal sign, and typing my equal sign lets Excel know I'm getting ready to put a formula here. So this is equal to, in parentheses, 2019, just click on my first cell there, minus the 2018 year-to-date, clicking on that cell, I'm going to close my parentheses. That difference divided by clicking on the 2018 year-to-date again. And I'm going to click enter, and it's going to give me my difference. All right, now because I want this, so let me check that one more time. All right, because I want this to appear as a percentage, I can format my cell as a percentage. I can do that one of two ways. Right-clicking on a cell and going to Format Cells gives me various formatting options. most versions of Excel also give me some of those formatting options up here on the toolbar. I can go to this drop down and tell it I want it to be a percentage, right? I can also choose to increase or decrease the number of decimal points up here. 2 is fine for me, but just to show you, that's how you increase and decrease. So this first one, it doesn't matter really because it's Alex, but you see there's a insane amount of growth from 2019 to 2018. Now I want to expand this, I want to calculate this formula all the way down. I'm going to hover here in the bottom right of the cell until I get a little plus sign. And when I do, I'm going to double click. And it's usually should fill in everywhere. I'm double clicking and it's not automatically filling in everywhere. So if you have a little quirk like that, you can do a couple things, but here's what I like to do. I just take the cell and I copy. You can either do Control-C or you can right-click and choose Copy. And then I paste it here. And as you can see, it didn't paste the same number. It's pasting the formula itself. So if I click in this cell, I see up here that my formula is E6 minus F6 divided by F6. So it's taking my formula down, right? So now I've copied and pasted it here. I'm going to try to double click one more time, and that's not expanding it either. All right, I'm not sure why that's giving me trouble, but at any rate, here's what you can do if it's not dragging down for you. You can click and hold and drag down. Okay, and it'll fill it in for as long as you're dragging down. The other thing you can do is you can copy, highlight everything, and paste. It's a little cumbersome. I'm not sure why it's not working to drag down, but sometimes that happens in Excel. And it's going to give you all of your formulas there. I'm going to skip over this section for Fran because a lot of these are employees. So if we jump down to, we're looking at Bob Widow's accounts here. You know, if the account has no sales this year and it did have sales last year, you're always going to see negative 100%. This account's down 50%. This account here is up 129%. If your 2018 sales are 0, whether it's a new account or if it's an account that hasn't done any business in 18 or 19, year to date, you're going to get the invalid response here because you can't divide by 0. So that's what all those divide zeros are going to give you. Find a national salesperson. So if we look down here at Jeremy for Littman, we see that they're up 61%. We're looking at Massarelli, down 28%, et cetera, et cetera. That's showing you the percentage change, again, between 2019 year-to-date and 2018 year-to-date. Now, I want to see my dollars change between 2019 year-to-date and 2018 year-to-date. So I'm going to create a new column header. Again, I'm going to wrap my text, and I'm going to select the whole column and center it. It's just the formatting I prefer. So now, I just want to see this year's dollars minus last year's dollars. That formula is a little bit easier to set up. So I'm going to say it is equal to this cell that I click on minus this cell that I click on. And it gives me the dollars difference. I'm going to hope that it'll drag down, and it did. It's hard to tell what the difference is, but that one worked. And so now it's dragged down all the way, and it's showed me all the dollar differences. A little trick I like to use just to identify, to separate the negatives from the positives. If I go up here and select this whole column, and I right-click and go to Format Cells, under Number, I can choose, if I tell it I want it to be a number, and I can choose the number of decimal places. I'm good with 2. I normally like to use the comma to separate the thousands. I can choose to have negative numbers appear in red. So I choose this one that's in red with the parentheses. So now that quickly shows me which ones are negative and which ones are positive. I can do the same thing over here on the percentages. So even though we have them formatted as, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I cannot do that on the percentages. Excuse me. All right. So I've got my percentage change from 19 year-to-date to 18 year-to-date. My dollars change from 19 year-to-date to 18 year-to-date. And now the last thing I want to see is my dollars change from 18 full year to 19 year-to-date, just to know if we want to come out even, this is the number of dollars that we need to sell for the rest of the year. So this is going to be dollars change from 19 year-to-date to 18 full year. I'm going to wrap it, I'm going to center it. So instead of saying it's equal to this minus this, I want it to be this minus this. So I'm going to say equal to my 19 year-to-date minus my 18 full year. Hover down here, wait for the plus sign, double click, and it didn't work. It's just a good example of how Excel can be quirky. So I'm just going to drag down this time. All right. And again, I want to quickly identify where I might already be ahead of last year versus it's going to be normal to see a lot of negatives here. Format cells, number, lesson separator, parentheses option, and there we go. And actually with these two, I formatted them as numbers, but I'm going to go back in. I'm actually going to format them as currency, so my dollar sign shows. You don't have to, it's just my personal preference. And again, I'll select this option for how it shows negatives. So now I've got my dollar signs there. All right. That's the most common formulas that you're going to put in using this kind of data. But there's many more options out there, just kind of showing you some basic stuff. All right. I mentioned I would go over how to get the total if I wanted the total. So I can go down here to the very bottom. And if I want to add grand totals, excuse me, that's the wrong spot. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to add grand totals. Now, if we didn't have these subtotals by salesperson, I could just do a sum of the whole column. It would be nice and easy. But because I do have these subtotals by salesperson, it's going to be a little more cumbersome to create the total. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this cell here while I'm clicked in it is equal to, and I'm going to select each and every salesperson's total. So it's equal to the Robert Jones total. And then I'm going to hit the plus sign, the Mike Cractrady total, plus the Scott Gallagher total, so on and so forth until I get every salesperson in here. And as I'm scrolling through, I'm just looking for spots where there's no number here. It's an easy way that my eyes can jump to the subtotals. And again, I'm clicking on the plus sign before I click on each one, and I can see my formula building up here. This is only going to show active people unless the person has had sales this year. So like, or it's had sales in any of the date ranges you're pulling. So Emily, she did have sales in 2018. That's why she's still showing here. I will probably have Chris add a total to this report. Again, it's not the best total to rely on, but it'll save all this work for when you do want an idea. And then this should be Fran, my last one. Okay, and after I select my last one, I just hit the enter key, and that gives me my grand total down below. When I click on this, it's always going to show me the formula up here, and I'll tell you something I do. When I'm going through a lot of data like this, the numbers can start to run together, and I want to make sure I'm not accidentally clicking in the wrong column. If I look up here at all my formulas, I'm interested in summing numbers in column E. So I'm just looking everywhere for E's to make sure I didn't throw any F's in there. All right. Now, once I get that grand total, I don't have to do that all over again for this column. I can simply copy and paste. All right, just pasting everything there. And then on my formulas, I can copy and paste those as well. So when I do my formula, copy and paste my percentage formula here, it tells me that we're 4% off for this year to date. We're $668 off for the year to date. And to be even with 18 full year, we need to do, whoops. Yeah, so we need to do another 10 million this year to beat last year. Approximately, again, all of those supplier bill backs and everything have to be taken out. So the figures that you're seeing on the monthly analysis or hierarchies that Jennifer sends out, those are what you rely on. This is just a general idea, a general idea here. All right. There are ways to check this total. There are other ways to actually calculate these subtotals by resorting that save a little time, but we won't get into that today. All right. So the last thing I'm going to do here before we close up is just format this to print. I do this with any Excel document just in case I send it to somebody and they end up printing it. I always want it to be print ready when they get it. So to do that, I'm going to first go to page layout, and I'm going to change my orientation to landscape because I know I've added columns. This is going to need to print long ways. And then I go up to view, and I go to page break preview. And actually, it's all within its normal page range. If I saw it like this, I would drag it out over here. Show you an example of what it would look like if I needed to adjust my page breaks. So,
hello.
Devin, I'll call you back.
All right.
So if I had a page break here, for example, if everything wasn't fitting on one page, I would just go over here to this line, click, and drag it over, and that'll make everything appear in one page. You can also play with the scale like I was just doing to get everything on one page. You can see kind of how much you can blow it up before you get over to another page. I'm also going to check my size. And it's a good thing I did check my size. This is set to legal format. I'm going to change it to letter. And when I change it to letter, it does throw my page break back in here at me. So I'm going to adjust my scale down. There, it's covering everything. And then one final thing I like to do is I like for my column headers to repeat on each page. So to do that, I can do it here, or I can go back to my normal view. And I want to go to page layout and to page setup. I go to the margins or excuse me, I want to go to the Sheet tab. And for rows to repeat at top, I'm clicking in this blank cell, and then I'm going over here and I'm dragging along the rows that I want to repeat. So I want rows 1, 2, and 3 to repeat. And there's a 4th blank row hidden, so threw that in there too, that's fine. And I'll say okay. Now, when I go to File and Print, and it shows me my little print preview, I can flip pages. You notice it's giving me my header on each page. All right, I can scroll all the way to the end here, and I see my last page with my grand totals. All right, so this spreadsheet
full 2017 cap
is formatted
2017 cap
and ready to